Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome back to Think and Thrive. It is our pleasure today to have a very, very special guest, Mr. Maaz Sheikh, CEO and co-founder of Stars Play Media. But before I say thank you to him, I also need to say thank you to Hannah, who's our moderator today, Robin and Adela, who are our IB film students who are here today to help film. And in addition to that, a huge thank you to the media teachers who also helped to make this possible today. So we really look forward to hearing about Mr. Sheikh's journey from working in the United States to working in the Middle East at OSN, and then of course to co-founding Stars Play here in the Middle East, which is one of the fastest growing streaming services, and we'll hear about how he does that. All right, just so that you know, Mr. Sheikh has been named 2019 Media CEO of the Year, the 2019 GCC Inspiring Leaders. In 2018, he was voted one of the 100 most influential leaders in the region. And in 2017, he was the Small to Medium-Sized Enterprise Leader of the Year. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Maaz Sheikh and Ms. Hannah to their seats. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Mr. Sheikh. It's our pleasure to have you here at Think and Thrive event, and we're really excited to have you here because obviously you're the CEO of Stars Play, and we really think you can inspire and help our students at Sunmarke.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure. To start off, what exactly were you doing with your career before Stars Play, and was this the career you've always dreamed about?
I'm an engineer by education. I'm an electrical computer engineer by education. I started off my career as an engineer working for a telecom company in the US. And for personal reasons, to be closer to my dad back then, I moved to Dubai in 2006. And I was working for what is OSN now. So I worked for OSN for about 9 years before leaving OSN and starting this new journey with Stars Play.
And why did you choose to come to the UAE instead of all countries?
Well, there's multiple reasons. One, my family's originally from Pakistan, and my dad at that time, who was 75, decided to live in Pakistan at that time, and I wanted to be close to him, wanted my kids to be closer to him, and Dubai was an ideal place for that. And also, I found a job here, and got a good opportunity to start a new career with Showtime at that time, which is now OSN. So, combination of professional and personal reasons brought me to Dubai.
So what inspired you to start Stars Play?
Again, it's a combination of factors. But for me, I had done a few startups back in the US and had mixed success with those startups. And to me, it felt like, it's sort of now or never. I was 45 years old at that time when we started building Stars Play, and I felt like this is sort of now or never, and I'd been working in a big company for a while. So that was perhaps the first thing. I had a desire to do a startup. Second is, I had worked at OSN for a long time, and I didn't get a chance to become a CEO there. And sometimes, having a bit of an ego and pride can be a good thing, as long as you can manage it. And so I decided that, okay, if I'm not getting an opportunity or a chance to become a CEO here, I'll have to, create a company and become one.
So would you say your ego is what led you to become a CEO?
Ego alone is I wouldn't characterize it that way, But yes, there was certainly during that time pride and ego certainly plays into that. But I think ultimately you need a deeper purpose and sort of a deeper mission behind if you're going to take a big or risky step in your life. And for me, it was attached to to doing something for my family and my kids, and just doing something different.
In the beginning, were you ready to have that chance of failure? Because personally, I think like failure may seem like a setback, but it's actually a good way for improvement. Were you ready for that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I was ready for failure, because I think that can be a very challenging way to look at it, to look at a situation. I think one has to be optimistic. Yes, you need to be realistic, but one has to stay optimistic about your chances of success. I have kids that are your age, and my older one would tell me this stat that, Baba, do you know 90% of the companies that get started each year don't make it past year one? And statistically, he's right. The failure rate is very high. But when you're starting a journey to do something new, you have to be optimistic and hope and pray that the dots will connect. But at the same time, I think you need that humility to realize that, yes, you could fail as well, and you don't control everything, but you still have to hope that eventually the dots will connect and things will work out.
So obviously it did work out for you, and Stars Play is one of the fastest growing entertainment services in the Middle East. And how did you start off? What was your source of funding when you first started?
So, this is a business that's relatively capital intensive. So it's one of those where you realize that you need someone strategic from the industry to validate your vision, validate your idea. And for us, we tried to raise capital in the region. We spoke to the studios and broadcasters in the region. But the feedback we would get is perhaps the infrastructure is not ready, or the consumer is not ready. But the reality is the consumer and the infrastructure in this part of the world was ready. But just as an industry, we weren't prepared to accept the change that was going to happen anyway. And so we looked all over the world. We spoke to a lot of studios, and one of the studios from Hollywood that trusted us and backed us is Lionsgate. So they're the ones that make movies like Hunger Games, and they are the ones that backed us initially and trusted us and trusted our idea. And then with their validation, we were able to bring in more investors, financial investors into the mix. And then we did 3 rounds of funding in the last 6 years. And we've raised a total of $125 million US dollars in funding to build the business.
That's amazing.
I'm glad it got you excited, because it is a big number.
Yeah. Stars Play was a huge success. And obviously you have many competitors, Netflix, Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. And how would you say Stars Play is different to them?
Like you said, there are a lot of competitors in the space. I would say Netflix is perhaps our biggest competitor. Against Netflix, our challenge is actually the strength of their brand. Right, so Netflix is a global powerhouse. It's a very powerful brand, especially with your demographics. 16 to 25-year-olds. Netflix is a very, very popular brand, and so we have to find our ways of competing with them. So the way I like to think is where Netflix sees problems and challenges, we see opportunity and hope. So for example, in this part of the world, especially outside of UAE, credit card penetration is lower than US or Western Europe. So while having a credit card in your home and your friend's home is a very normal thing and we take it for granted, the reality is for most of the world, not having a credit card is the norm. So how do you become a mass product or a service if 80% or 90% of the population in Egypt or Morocco or 70% of the population in Saudi does not have credit card, and Netflix only sells through credit cards? So what we did is we enabled mobile payments. So you can pay for Stars Play through your Etisalat or Du mobile phone number here. And in Egypt, you can pay with your Vodafone, Orange, or Etisalat mobile phone numbers. And we did the same thing in Saudi, then we did the same thing in all the countries we operate in. So we made our product available and accessible to the masses rather than the elite who only have a credit card. So that's perhaps the biggest differentiation. And then on top of that, we make, just like Netflix, we make big bets on shows. And we do it by our core audience. So for example, in your demographics, still Friends is a very, very popular show, but it's also on Netflix, so we share that with Netflix. But then at the same time, we'll make a point of picking shows that are only on our service. For example, again, very popular among high schools and college students is Big Bang Theory as a comedy, right? That's it's only on our service, or Flash, or Supergirl, or Batwoman. You know, these are shows that you'll only find on our service. So we found ways to reach more people through distribution and mobile payment as an edge against Netflix. And then we also found content that only we carry, and people come to us for that content.
And obviously, you've been through a lot during your journey. And what would you say is the experience that helped you the most for your success?
I think having a grounded family and having that deeper purpose behind what you're doing is extremely necessary, because you go through ups and downs, and startups and an entrepreneurial journey highs can be very, very high, and then lows can be extremely low. So you essentially have to average out the highs and the lows and manage your day-to-day through sort of a daily average, if you will, of highs and lows. But what gets you through that is having a deeper purpose, having a family, deep-rooted family commitment, and for me it was sort of the family that kept me going. And getting through the difficult times, because otherwise it becomes a near impossible journey. So that's perhaps the one thing. Second thing I'll say is, often for entrepreneurs, it's stressed that you need the conviction of your idea, and you need to be hard-headed and believe in yourself and have that confidence in yourself. And I think those things are extremely important, but equally important is having the humility to accept that you're wrong, because there are hundreds of things that we got wrong when we first got started. And it was only because we had the humility to accept the fact that we got it wrong, go back, adjust, fine-tune, and then you keep going. So I think having that humility to accept that you've made a mistake and adjusting is extremely important as well.
Yeah, I definitely do, because your family always stick by you and they'll always be there to support you.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something someone should take into account.
Yeah.
Would you also say that's also something a new startup business or a new entrepreneur into the market would have to have?
No, I wouldn't say that. Lots of successful people actually didn't have, such strong family roots. I mean, you look at, someone like Steve Jobs. He came, he was adopted into a family. He had very loving, caring parents, but he definitely had challenges in his childhood. If you read his book. So I wouldn't say it's a necessary condition, but it's just that you need to find something that that motivates you, that drives you beyond just the idea of making money or success. Now, different people have different things that motivate them and that keep them going, but you need to find that whatever that deep purpose is and connect it to the goal that you are chasing, right? So for me, it could be I want to provide for the family, and to me, Success of Stars Play is a way to provide for my family, and that's what keeps me going.
And what about your challenges during making Stars Play?
So I think this is where the idea of also accepting the fact that not all of us are Steve Jobs, right? So Steve Jobs was he was along with Wozniak, who was his partner. He was an engineer. He was a product designer. He was raising capital. He was running the company. He was everything, and that's why he's such a larger than life character. But most of us are not Steve Jobs, right? I mean, so this is where I think you also need the humility to accept the fact that you need the right people around you to make that company or that venture or your idea successful. So we have a very strong team around me, and I have certain strengths, but they fill in the overall needs of the company, so that the company is not dependent on one person.
And also, when looking or for hiring people, what qualities makes them stand out to you?
So I have to admit, I'm not the best person at hiring, because I've been wrong, and it's one of those things that doesn't come naturally to me when hiring people. But having said that, I'll say that I've trained myself over the years not to hire for personality traits, but hire for specific skills and knowledge and experience, combined with the drive and hunger. I think quite often you find people who have the right skill and have the right experience, but they might not be as hungry and not have the drive as much as the next person. And so that drive and hunger to succeed, especially in a startup environment, is extremely important.
And what may be those skills and experiences?
So, the way this world is evolving and the way the future is evolving, and like you said, you are in the media major, you're taking media classes. I mean, just in last 10 years, the consumption of media has shifted considerably. Even in last 6 months during COVID-19 and lockdowns, the consumption of media has shifted a lot. So everything is becoming more and more driven by artificial intelligence and data analytics and machine learning. And I think this is where the world is headed, where artificial intelligence is going to be deciding what content that you are watching today. It's going to figure out to continue to serve you that type of content. So I think the skills of the future, if you will, are these technology skills that are beginning to replace the traditional skills of entertainment, if you will. More and more artificial intelligence is where I see the industry headed now.
And do you feel like as you're constantly growing, obviously we're all growing as humans, do you always feel like your views and content will always change with that?
It needs to. I mean, sometimes I feel we're not adapting fast enough, and we have to keep up with Netflix. You know, they're a much more resourceful company than we are, and so. For example, you know, Netflix recently launched this feature to watch with your friends, you know, and it's becoming quite popular, and we're trying to keep up with it. Same thing on understanding your audience better. So, for example, during the lockdown, during COVID, we grew in terms of minutes of content that's watched on our service. We grew more in 5 or 6 weeks during the lockdown than we did in an entire 5 years of our company's history. So one has to adapt to this changing consumer behavior, and I think with the new reality of us spending more time at home and working from home and some schooling from home as well, there is a lot more consumption of streaming content than it ever was before. So we have to keep up with it. We have to adapt, and we're trying to do our best to keep up with that demand and changing needs.
And how would you motivate your team for that?
So there's a few things on motivation, right? So one, I think I encourage people to be self-motivated and self-driven. You know, as you go into university and you go into work environment, we all have to be self-driven and self-motivated and find that energy and dig deep inside us to find that energy, and not expect that when we go to work, someone is going to give us a magic pill to get us motivated. You know, but at the same time, one way to stay motivated for us is, again, to find that deeper purpose and deeper connection. And I feel, especially with us during COVID-19, because my colleagues, unlike me, are quite young. You know, our average workforce is about 23, 24 years old. And so the millennials were quite motivated especially during COVID-19, because they finally felt that they found a bigger purpose to what we are doing beyond just streaming, you know, TV shows and movies. They felt that they were part of something bigger. They're solving a bigger problem, helping people stay at home, stay safe, and be part of, an escape that we're providing our customers. So I think always looking for that deeper purpose and meaning can be motivating for a lot of us, including our employees and colleagues.
So I know that Stars Play is particularly popular in the Middle East. And how did you manage to do that?
Become popular?
Yeah.
So it's, so in most businesses, you have to have a combination of things that come together, right? So in our business, for example, it has to start with the right content, right? If you come to our service and if you don't find the shows that you're looking for, no matter how beautiful the interface is, how beautifully it streams, you're not going to stick with it. So it has to start with the right content. And then you have to give the right user interface and the right experience as you're changing screens and flowing between different environments within the app. So that overall experience is extremely important. And thirdly, we have to build the brand and the marketing to get the awareness out. And for that, we rely heavily on social media. So we're quite active on Facebook, on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok now. We have several videos, clips on TikTok that have crossed multiple, millions of views. So we're quite active and YouTube. We're quite active on all social media to drive our awareness.
I've definitely seen the Stars Play ads when I'm scrolling through the internet.
On Snapchat or Instagram?
Mostly on TikTok, actually.
Mostly on TikTok, okay. Yeah.
It's very common between the teenagers nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what percentage of ad marketing has there been in your budget?
So that's an important one. So we big chunk of our spending budget goes towards content. So almost 60% of our budget goes towards licensing and acquiring and producing shows that hopefully you and your friends are watching. And then the next big bucket for us is marketing. So almost on an annual basis, almost 20% of our budget goes into marketing. So 20% of whatever we bring in revenue goes towards marketing. And but that number changes. So if you are a bigger, more established company, that percentage could be less. But when you're building a brand and building a company from scratch, that percentage needs to be higher. So when we were first getting started, for example, this number was much, much higher. So over time, as we built the brand, the percentage comes down.
And obviously, Stars Play is still growing. So where do you see Stars Play in 1 year?
So we have been growing. So between 2019 and 20, we will have grown about 60%, and we expect to keep the same growth rate for next year as well. And there's a few goals we have for next year. One is growing our subscriber base. Today we have about 1.8 million subscribers. We want to be at 2.3, 2.4 million by end of next year.
Perfect. Going back to this, what tips would you give to online media, particularly online? Are there any differences between that?
Sure. So online media is changing very, very rapidly, and it's becoming a combination of media and entertainment, but also technology. So the reason for TikTok's popularity, like you were saying, is not only the ease of use and the features in it, but it's also the technology behind it that makes it so successful. So, and then for companies like ours that use TikTok for marketing purposes, we need to be able to connect our technology and our apps with TikTok's apps and TikTok's technology. So this combination of media and technologies is changing very, very rapidly. So that's one. Second point to note is you need to understand your audience. So while you might never go on Facebook, but maybe your parents do, or you might have cousins and siblings that go on Facebook. And same thing by country. So in certain countries, Facebook is more popular than Instagram. In other markets, Instagram and Snapchat are more popular than TikTok. And so we have to segment your audience by age demographics and other variables, as well as by country. So you have to almost look at it as a portfolio and balance across the portfolio.
How do you know what films and TV shows particularly to invest in? Because obviously different shows, different movies are popular between different age groups.
Yeah.
So how do you know which films and shows to?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because that's where we spend all our money, and that's at the end, not all our money, but a big part of our budget. And that's also perhaps the single most important factor in customers picking us or Netflix. And actually, almost 1/3 or almost 40% of our customers have both Stars Play and Netflix. So the idea behind how we pick shows and movies is a function of a few things. But we certainly start with the demand. And the way we measure the demand is, again, we look at the data. So you can look at Google search trends. So you can plot for last 3 years search trends between Friends versus Big Bang Theory versus, How I Met Your Mother. And you can compare them all. So looking at demand trends is extremely important. We also look at piracy websites, on what people are downloading on pirated sites, to get an idea of what shows and movies are popular. And then it also depends on, we need a combination of certain shows that we want exclusively on our service versus some that we can't get exclusive and we have to share with either Netflix or OSN.
Thank you, Mr. Sheikh, for joining us today at Think and Thrive. I'm sure this is really inspiring for our students, and it's our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And you've been a great host. Thank you for having me. I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.